Welcome back to the Crochet Crowd as well as yarnspirations.com. I'm your host Mikey. Today we're going to go on the dark side of the forest and learning how to knit together. The beautiful backdrop that you see is the real deal here. It's a LYS, the local yarn shop called Llama Laine in Hanover, Ontario. Agreed to let me film in here for the introductory series of learning how to knit. But I'll tell you a little secret, I don't know how to knit. So you're going to be able to knit along with me and learn the lessons as I do. Yarnspirations.com has asked me to learn the basics of knitting, and I tell you I almost dropped the phone when they told me to do so, because knitting for me has been one of those projects and one of those items and one of those crafting where I kind of beeline past it because the knitting wall scares the bejeebus right out of me. So what we're going to be doing in this series is that I'm going to be learning how to knit, practice, and then show you how to knit. So it's actually kind of a fun series because instead of me being an expert of years and years and years showing you how to knit, I'm going to be knitting alongside you and sharing the skills. Now I've rounded up a couple women that are actually going to be teaching me in person on how to be able to knit, as well as there's some great tutorials already available on yarnspirations.com in their YouTube channel on the basics of knitting as well. So what I want to do is I want to kind of go in there and learn the basics, because I think my fear of the yarn aisle for the knitting section is the fear of the unknown, of not being able to really understand it. So knitting isn't actually that new to me. So I learned how to knit as a child, and actually more Canadians knit than they do crochet, which is kind of funny because I'm Canadian and yet I crochet more than I knit. So it's kind of funny, I'm on the polar opposite of the spectrum as far as what the demographics of knitters to crocheters are here in Canada. So knitting to me scares me. Okay, it just scares me. It's two knitting needles. If I drop a stitch, it is the nightmare. I create words that I should never create, and it's a matter of trying to fix it and to being able to repair. And I think that's one of my biggest deterrents with learning how to knit, is that fear of actually dropping stitches. So my mom taught me how to knit as a child, and I learned how to do a knit stitch as well as purling, but I never really made anything substantial. Well, I did make something, but you know, I used to play with Barbies, and that should not be a shock to anybody, but I made Barbie the perfect hammock ever. She had a hard day at work and she would come home and have to lie in my little hammock. So, you know, Mom kind of made it fun for us. I have an active imagination, and I think that's part of the learning experience as a child, is that if you can make it fun and relevant toward imagination and creativity, it actually makes it a lot more fun. So that's as far as I got. So I stopped knitting when I was 11. I'd never knit much, and then I went to crochet then when I was 14 for the first time, and then I've been hooked to the crochet hook ever since. But knitting came back into my life a few years ago. Let me tell you a little bit about that. So we all remember the big sachet ruffle thing. We remember all that ruffle yarn, and all of a sudden it just blew up and everybody's like, what is that? And everybody's running to these local yarn shops. So I ended up having to buy knitting needles again to play with ruffle scarves, and we have some actually quite a few tutorials on learning how to knit using ruffle yarn. The advantage of it, it's kind of idiot proof. Well, I'm relating that to myself more than anybody, is that you really, it is so simple. You don't have to worry about the purling or anything because the stitches are all hidden by the ruffles. So that was kind of as far as I got to knitting a few years ago. But now I'm thinking about going really harder to the dark side and learning how to knit. So let's talk a little bit about your first steps and kind of the fear that I have when it comes to learning how to knit. So my biggest fears on how to knit is that I have these assumptions, and this is the introductory series, and I'm hoping at the end of the series that I have a change of opinion. So knitting to me means expensive, it means hard, it means complicated, it means impossible. It means a lot of words that are very negative in the sense, and I think that's why I always beeline past the knitting section, is because I have this automatic assumption. But I think it's like anything. When you don't understand something, you come to the conclusion of what it means for you, even though it may not even be realistic. Now, technically, there are people that crochet and knit, and some people prefer one or the other. I can see that being totally relevant, but for myself, is that I gravitate towards the crochet because it's just so much easier, because I don't have to learn how to hold the knitting needles, and I don't have to learn a lot of things. I don't understand how to read crochet or knitting patterns. I don't understand the knitting needle sizes. I don't even know what circular needles are versus the regular straight ones. So there's a lot of lessons that I need to learn within myself, and I think it's that fear that stops me from wanting to pursue. And so, you know, for me on the Crochet Crowd, it's all about the experience of being able to share the joy of crochet. And I think for me, it's about trying to find that balance of of something that I enjoy, but also something that is practical, but also something that I kind of want to learn for myself. So I think it's going to be a very interesting series, because as I learn, so will you. That's a little bit about my history and why we're doing this, and it's going to be a fun experience. If you like to learn how to knit, you want to learn with somebody that's learning along with you, I am your man right now. So this is a great opportunity to be able to learn a new skill. But you know what, where's the first step? The first step is the desire to learn to knit, and then what's the next step? Well, that's going to come up in our next special edition. We'll see you again real soon. I'm Mikey of the Crochet Crowd, going on the dark side of the force for knitting. We'll see you. Bye.